Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We're going to call to order our special board meeting, March 9th, 2023, special board meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education. For roll call today, we've got 5 members present in person. So we'll move on right away to item 3, and that is the report on the new high school website from Dr. Rayburn.
Dr. Rayburn has been working diligently on this as he's been trying to move information from one spot to the next. He's actually over to the new high school site today and took some extra drone footage. I'm not sure if he'll get that up on the website here today, but that would probably be in the next 2 or 3 days. So that's the new drone footage. We actually have walls, we have windows. Well, we don't have windows, but we have places for windows right now. So, and a door frame. So it's exciting.
So I'm hoping that I can scroll over here. If not, I'll have to do it from back there and just show you all, which I can't. So this is the new website. I'm just going to go step back here so you all can see, but. Yeah, we can scroll. So this is the prototype of what we have going for us, if you don't mind. So this, in my mind, is a way that we can have the new high school as the forefront of what it's going to look like. This is the main entrance rendering of our high school currently, that it's going to be. And keep going down for me. And then as you scroll down the page, you're going to get updated pictures of what the website is and the progress of this one, obviously from January. We haven't updated it from February, but then on each side of our website, you're going to have some of the facts that we have related to the old high school versus the new high school, some fun facts. That was actually already on the old website. It was just buried a little bit, and I thought it was actually pretty interesting, you know, just like how many classrooms are in the old one versus how many classes are in the new one. And as far as like the capacity, the size of the new building and all of that, this is all based off of the pre-base bid of the new cafeteria. So this doesn't have the updated alternatives that you all have voted on already.
There was some square footage added to the
Yes.
footprint
Yeah.
based on the alternatives.
Yeah, so the cafeteria is slightly larger because of the new footprint of that. But for the most part, this is pretty much the same. We're going to update this to be current. This is just something I found on the old website. And then we're working on the process of right now of pulling all of those community meetings that were held in 2019, 2020, 2021, pulling those and placing them on here too, just as their references, not everything. There's one more thing that I want to show you that we've been working with with Trace Creek and the architect on the design. So let me pull that up real quick.
Josh, is this under a tab on our district website?
This will be.
Okay.
It's in test or something, yeah.
Yeah.
So Mr. Smith and I have been working with Mr. Ratliff on actually getting us a presentation together for our new high school every month. So this is a proposed layout. This is just as if it was a proposed one where it goes through, click the next slide for me, Shane. The project, how much we've currently spent, how much is projected to be. This is not current numbers, just so we all know. These are just base numbers that I had from January or February-ish. So please don't take these as current. But it also is giving us the percentage complete. Now remember, percentage complete is not months. It is based off of the percent that is currently finished. And as things wrap up, like and get a little bit faster, when the walls start getting built and everything else, that number is going to increase significantly into there. But it gives the community and gives you all more of a snapshot of what's been happening as far as change orders, any change orders that we've put, how much money we've changed that to be as well. And then the scheduled completion date as it stands based off of the meetings. And then, yeah,
I have a quick question.
Can you turn your microphone on?
What is the GC contract sum? Oh, I'm so sorry. And speak into it. Turn it on and speak
Yeah.
into it. What is the GC contract sum?
so that is the amount that we've paid to the general contractor, I believe, to date. Is that right?
The general contractor sum is different from the total project cost because
Yeah.
all the dollars don't go to the general contractor. There's furniture and other soft costs built in. So the GC contract sum should reflect the construction cost of the project.
Okay, so it's not the total paid to the contractor, but just the, okay.
Yeah, so that should have been on the report. I believe that Clay or Mr. Ratliff turned into you all last time that had the updates. So if that's confusing or anything, we can amend that to be what you all would like it to be.
It just seems like it would make more sense to have the total, because I'm not sure if that's not the total.
So the total project cost would be reflected here.
Correct, but the total
Spent.
costs or total bills paid to Trace Creek, is that the 38, or is it higher than that?
Well, that 38's not accurate to begin with, right?
Probably not.
So,
Yeah.
Trace Creek is only the construction manager. Anyway, they're not the general contractor. I'm not sure exactly who got I don't know. Maybe Rising Sun was the general contractor, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I guess all I'm saying is, like, if we have, like, the total sum paid to the general contractor, then I just want to make sure that reflects the total sum that has been paid
So
to.
you're, just so I can know, you're saying you would rather have the total paid to everybody?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, or not just one, you know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
have, like, the total for the architect, the total
Yeah.
for the general contract, or the Trace Creek above. Like, if you're gonna have it for one, I just think you would have it for all, instead of just for the GC contract sum. You would have it in the first line, the second line, and the third line.
So we can make that just a total paid as of the March meeting, a total paid to everybody, not just individual lines. Is that okay for you?
That would make sense to me, actually, just total project
Yeah.
cost and then where we're at year to date.
Yeah.
And then coupled with that percent of contract
Sure.
completed, I think gives you, I just don't know how much, what that really is gonna mean to anybody to say it was X dollars to the architect,
Yeah.
X dollars. I kind of like, here's the total project cost and where are we?
Yeah, I think that's good. I just wanna make sure that we don't have just the total cost, but it's not really the total cost.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Agreed. Yep.
Just wanted to make
Yep.
sense.
And like I said, these numbers are not exact, so please don't
Yeah.
take these as
Understood.
real. These are just
Yeah.
placeholder numbers. So we can make that adjustment as well. And then the slide 3 would have the building phase for every month, just so that when Mr. Ratliff is referring to part C, you could easily, and anybody in the community could go to see what part C is. That's our ag CTE on the bottom level. That's what they're currently building right now. And
Love
then
that you put the colors up there, by the way. It's
This-
so much easier to read that thing with the colors.
And actually, if you look at C right now, you see the block at the top, at the end of C to the top of it. They poured that pad today. I
Awesome.
watched the truck come in this morning as I was leaving, and they poured that pad.
Yeah.
So the bottom is where you see the windows at.
And you
The
can-
bottom of C is where you're going to see
you
the
can
windows.
see it if you click on
go
slide
right now,
6.
you see the walls and the windows.
Yeah. So just so you can see, like visually, C is right there. There's the bump out for C, and right next to where that little green thing is right there, that's where our walls are currently standing with the, from our drone footage we took today, that's where the C wing is with the, you can actually see where the windows are going to be and everything. It's that far up. And then on slide 4, these are basically everything that's done at the project meeting, where he says the progress for the past 30 days, and then the project progress for the next 30 scheduled, and then pictures, current pictures of the thing. So we just want to make sure that this is information that is beneficial to you all, and if there's anything we need to add.
Fabulous.
I think this is exactly what we were looking for. Like, and the fact that the other stuff has been so stagnant, like this is just far beyond, I think what we're even thinking you could do this quickly. So thank you so much.
It was not just me.
Everybody,
my team.
everybody that pitched in, thank
Yeah.
you very much.
So this would all live on one of these blocks here, and so every month you'll have a new update. So we'll put, we'll get the accurate numbers for February, and then in March, Trace Creek will, in their presentation, will have this general outline, and they'll update it with everything else. So,
Thank you. I think that looks amazing, and thank you for being proactive and just kind of saying, taking it a step further, not just, incorporating the website to our current website, but saying, well, this might be helpful, and these are some things that are great. So I appreciate that initiative.
thank you.
So Josh, our department will be updating it, right?
Yes, so
Yeah.
this is
We'll
on
take the
our,
information from Trace Creek and we'll update it.
yeah, so this is on our website, just like as soon as Mr. Ratliff gives me the information like he does normally with the drone footage, this will go onto the website probably the next day after the board meeting, after the board presentation.
And can we maybe do a Facebook Parent Square blast that, hey, this website is updated and it's now here, and sort of a preview for it, I
Sure.
think would be great.
So we can publish that as soon as we get all of it ready to go. This is obviously just the general outline, but our goal is to have it by the end of March, when our next board meeting is, to have this there for you all.
I
Thank
just
you
have one more question, Dr. Rayburn. The total capacity for the high school, I know on the fun fact sheet, it gives you kind of a breakdown of some very specific areas, but I didn't see this high school can hold 1,400 people or whatever it's going to be. Is there a way to include that on somewhere? Because we get asked that, I've been asked that a lot just throughout the community because there's so much building going on, and I think that's a question that people have frequently.
So the answer is 1,450, but yes, we can absolutely add that.
So 1450 is what the
Thank you.
answer is. But yeah, we'll add that. We're going to redo this fun fact sheet as well.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Yep.
I've had so many questions over the past few years, and we were told we are doing it, the CFO's doing it, this person's doing it, that person's doing it, and it just never happened until now. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
So Shane, if you go back to that tab that says so it will replace the new high school information. This will be on, it'll just go to this page instead.
Great,
So the other page will not exist anymore. So,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on to our regular agenda. Excuse me, we've got 3 items here. Item A is approve Phase 2 contracts for the new Woodford County High School track and field project. Mr. Smith's going to talk to us a little bit about this.
Tracks that reflect the bids that were taken for the Phase 2 track and field project. I should have had those on the last board meeting. I thought we'd already approved those, my mistake. So that is why they're on the meeting tonight. We need to get those approved so I can get those to Mr. Ratliff and we can keep moving forward with that project, so.
Is there a motion to approve the Phase 2 contracts for the track and field?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Discussion?
I did want to ask, does this update or these projects, does this incorporate the safety concerns and comments from the coach that had emailed all of us with just a long email with a lot of concerns and ideas, suggestions?
I'm not sure if that reflects, I'm not sure what we're talking about specifically. Is that what we talked about with Mr. Swingle?
I think so.
Yeah, when we met with Mr. Swingle
So
and
all
explained
this, yeah.
to him that some of the things that he was requesting wasn't possible, simply because of not necessarily funding, but space as well. But then that everything, we moved certain things that were a major concern for him to different areas to kind of spread out the pole vault area, if I'm not mistaken, discus throwing, those types of things. So I'm not sure if it's, I mean, that's what they're, that was the plan the last we saw it.
Has it been updated, Mr. Adkins? Was Trace Creek or Ross Torrent or someone going to go back and adjust the?
Yeah,
the
I think
device?
Ross Torrent was going to do that, but I haven't seen it updated. But
Okay.
that's the piece. And what you were there actually. I don't have to,
Yeah.
but they projected that it'd be very little cost to move anything within what he had asked to have moved. So,
And
yeah.
I would imagine that would come through as a change order on the BG ones or whatever we
Yeah,
already approved.
yeah, I would think
If
so.
there were
Yeah.
cost changes to it.
Yeah,
So-
if there's cost changes, it'll come through as
So what
BG1.
I understood, these contracts coincide
With-
with what we approved, not necessarily if there were changes made after that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Those contracts will not reflect that conversation. We don't, I've not seen anything with numbers to reflect the changes for that yet, so.
Okay.
I guess my concern is, in the email, it was, you know, there was a long list, and a lot of them had to do with safety concerns and also just usability concerns. And so, I wonder if we could put off approving these things until we see a plan, we know that the changes were made, you know, the coaches are comfortable with, you know, the safety and the use of the field. I just hate to keep approving things and then we go back and change things, and then we approve things like, you know, for instance, with the bathroom at the high school, and then we couldn't go back and change that or adjust that. And so I don't want to get into a position of having a track that is unsafe and doesn't meet the needs of the
I
track
think
and
that's
field.
a big overstatement that we have an unsafe track and field. I think
I
it
said I
is
don't
safe.
want to get in that position.
Exactly, which we're not in that position now. When you say that, it sounds like we're in that position. I
Let
don't
me-
think we are in that position, and I do think that Mr. Swingle and that group got the chance to sit down with the architect, with the construction firm, with all the parties involved, and I think that they set out what the changes were that we could do, and some we couldn't do. Some things we couldn't do because what was being asked for isn't even part of what we would be able to do in the first place. And what I understood came out of that was a list of things that we could do. And that will result in, if there are cost changes, the change orders. So to me, I think we need to just discuss approving these contracts for the BG1 that we already approved, and we can move on.
Well, and just let me be clear. In the email, there were safety concerns listed. There were a number of changes requested for the track to be usable and useful for the track teams to be able to host events and safely provide space for athletes. That is what I'm saying, and I'm saying no more than that. My point being, if we're approving the track and we don't know which changes have been made or haven't been made, we don't know if the safety concerns raised have been addressed, we don't know what the plan is. I don't want to get in a situation where it comes back, just like with the bathrooms, and is said, well, we've already ordered that stuff, we've already approved that stuff. That can't be changed. So my thought is that we would know all that up front. We as a board would know what we're approving. We would know what changes had been made. We would know what accommodations had been made. And so that was why I asked the question, has that been done? And is that reflected in this information?
Let me just add to that. I was present at the meeting with Mr. Swingle and the architects and Trace Creek, Mr. Atkins, Ms. McCown. The safety issues you're referencing are really more of preferential items. There are no safety issues as the track and field was designed and is reflected on the plans. So I want to be clear about that.
There are guidelines that have to be
Yeah,
followed
we-
when
Say
designing
Katie, you wouldn't
these
approve
things.
the
No.
plan
Right.
if there were safety issues.
Right.
And
There,
Ms. McCown was there, and I think a lot of the things that Mr. Swingle addressed were more comfortability.
One of the things, so I think in terms of safety, there was mention of an AED, and the concern was that with no standing structure, like the absence of a concession stand area where you would then be able to house equipment, bathrooms, and those kinds of things, what he expressed in that email is that there is no place on site to store an AED, and that the AED that they would have available was 2 minutes away. So that was a concern, a safety concern that he had, and I don't know that that was addressed.
The trainer carries one. He has one that's assigned to him specifically, Mr. Terhune.
Right.
Carries
If
it.
he's there though, because sometimes
Yeah.
he can't be at every single practice and every single location. If football's going on or soccer or something like that, if there's a game, he may be at that game. So in that case, there wouldn't be something like that on site. So I think in terms of safety, that's maybe what we're talking about.
We're not talking about a field house here though, right? Like I mean, that's off the table, not off the table, but that's not on the BG so that's not part of what we're voting on now.
That is correct. And, you know, as the BG1 was approved and the bids that were approved, regardless, a change order would have to be made for any of these changes. So that is regardless of what happens at this point. Any change made has to go through the change order process. So, Mr. Ratliff is not here tonight, but I'm certain he would tell you that this will definitely slow the project down if we have to wait for those architectural renderings to come back out and reflect those in a change order before we get these contracts approved. So I think that's really where we're at now. The changes that we discussed that day were really minor, according to the architect, according to Mr. Ratliff at Trace Creek. I think Mr. Swingle walked away from that meeting pleased with what we had decided to make changes for. As far as the AED, and you know, we still have on the table, we have to revisit that, is finding a suitable structure for the restroom area, and I'm sure we'd be able to accommodate an AED in that facility. But other than that, I think these contracts are reflected as far as what was originally drawn on the renderings. But we know that we're going to make those adjustments that we requested at the meeting that day. I've just not heard anything from the architect. Obviously, he has to go through and get the structural renderings redrawn so that the construction folks have information to quote any kind of change order from, right? So that's basically where we're at.
I guess my question is, why can't we wait and approve them after they make the changes? Or is it, can you just explain that?
Well, so I think that the folks are waiting right now to get these contracts. The vendors aren't gonna probably get carried away with doing a lot of construction as long as they don't have a contract approved. But I think it's probably because, well, as I mentioned, there's gonna have to be a change order regardless. The project as approved is what you have in these contracts. And so in order to change that, you're gonna have to do a change order process anyway. So I think in order to keep the project moving forward, because at the end of the day, there are very minor changes to this plan. And it all had to do with some of the track events being moved from basically this end of the field to the other end of the field. And so I don't think there's going to be a significant amount of cost difference with those changes. I don't think.
And you think that they would let us know that in what kind of time frame are you thinking?
Well, I can follow up with the architect. I mean, that's a very good question. I have not had any additional information from the architect about where we are with the additional changes with the rendering. So.
And the changes you think that we're going to get are going to address the concerns that we received from the coach?
Yes, based on the meeting we had the day at the job trailer. Again, I feel like Mr. Swingle was happy with all the adjustments that was he basically requested what he requested, and the architect figured out how to make it happen. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And may I, I'm sorry, just to be clear, what we have as it exists right now is the track. There wouldn't be bleachers. There would not be lights. There would be a locker room facility yet, or no?
Not yet.
Just the track and the practice field.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to.
That's what I
was
understood.
thinking.
This is just to get the track started, and then the other stuff we're still getting out bids because we had to pull back because
Separate
they
them.
went over budget. So this is just the track to get it started.
It's the track in the field, yes, absent any lighting, absent any bleachers, and currently absent any restroom facilities. The restroom facilities are the next thing that we're working on, trying to get in place for that. So.
And I did have a question about, is there a contingency for this BG1 or no?
There is. It's there's a contingency required for every BG project. I have it on my computer.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's 10% of whatever the
Yeah,
total
it's
project cost is.
10%.
3 million,
I'm-
it'd be 300,000.
I think it's $300 and some thousand dollars.
Okay,
Yes.
I wasn't sure because it was
That's what they require.
using general fund money only to do it, so I wasn't super sure. I wanted to double check.
Yeah.
So if these changes and the change orders come in, the project's already over budget, Or we would still have the contingency for those changes, or how would that work?
Yeah, there's still the contingency, but there's also 600-ish thousand dollars left because when we put it out for bid with the bathroom facility, we were over budget. So we made that an alternate so we could back that out. And once we back that out, there's 600-ish thousand dollars available in addition to the contingency. So, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Other questions or comments? All right, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any nays? Any opposed? Nope. All right, the motion passes 5-0. Item B is approving 4 members of the LPC committee. Is that?
Yeah,
Mr. Atkins?
either
Mr.
one.
Smith? All right.
We have Miss Lola Durbin agreed to be a part of this, Mr. Mayor Brian Troggett, Miss Emily Downey, and Shane, remind me of the fourth.
Miss McHale, we have to approve the
Who?
board member, Angela McHale.
Oh. Yes. Yeah. So,
All right, is there a motion to approve the 4 members of the LPC committee?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion?
I've got some questions. So this would be creating a new district facilities plan, so the LPC is required as part of that. So would that move our rotation? I know it wasn't due again until 2025. So would we be on an updated cycle now, or will there be another district facilities plan due in 2025?
So I think it can last 4 years, so I do not think that we have
it
to,
has the 4-year lifespan.
yeah.
Because the only reason that I was asking is because I know that if we have an existing district facilities plan, we have an existing LPC that already has community members on it. And I know the board members may change because I don't know who was on that before. But I just wondered about why we would have new members for the local planning committee if we already have an existing, plan. And then the second part of that question was, I know that in that regulation, I think it's 702, the school facilities planning manual, it says that the Board of Education is to select the community and business leaders to serve on that committee. And that it goes on to say that advertisements shall be made for business and community leaders, and that the board would select from those. So I was wondering if that advertisement happened and how they were selected.
No, I'm not aware of any advertisement whatsoever. I just reached out to Mayor Troggett and Miss Downey. And then actually when I thought we only had to have 2, but we had to have 3, so I just reached out to a former employee, Lola Durbin. Yeah, I didn't advertise anything. We didn't advertise anything, to my
Well,
knowledge.
the advertisement ran today. I referred to the notes in 2020 when this was done previously, and there was only one local community leader that came forth. And Superintendent Hawkins appointed the local community leaders at that meeting or for that committee, and those were approved. So knowing that we were on the short time frame, that's probably the best way to do if we didn't have anyone volunteer for that previously. So, but the advertisement did run. Yeah. No, and that's fine. All the public forums, the initial kickoff meeting, and then the meeting at the end will all require public advertisement. So those will all be done.
Well, I do have a couple questions. I don't know that we can really appoint folks today if the advertisement just ran today. Probably we need to make sure to follow whatever the rules are, right? And then the second thing is, I was looking through the website because I went ahead and got the training that, from KSBA that Ms. McHale, mentioned at the last meeting. And I didn't see anything in there about districts can just decide to redo their facilities plan and reappoint a local, planning committee. I just didn't see anything in there about that at all.
Well, I've reached out to KDE to clear that up. Mr. Lease, Mr. Dunbar with the Department of Education, Facilities and Grounds said you can absolutely reappoint your LPC and redo your district facility plan at your leisure, essentially. And so I think one of your questions, Gary Least had answered about the committee. And I can't remember what your question was about that, but I've reached out to them as far as the appointing the members, I think. And we are well within our right to do all that, all the above in that regard. So, I mean, they're giving us the okay, so I'm not sure why we would argue with that, but
I'm just saying I didn't see it on their website or in the training, so I just simply asked the question to make sure that we're following all the rules, guidelines, and regulations.
we're trying to.
Right, right, and I think that's really important, because if you don't, that can usually come back and bite you. So it's a good idea to follow the law and policy and to do, you know, what we're supposed to do. And then my other question is, so I don't know that we fulfilled the advertising requirement, I guess.
We did fulfill the advertising requirement. The advertisement ran today in today's newspaper.
So the advertisement says it runs at 9 a.m. and you have to apply by 4 p.m. or what does it say?
There's nothing in the advertisement about applying for serving on the local community or as the local community leader. I guess I would question what is the issue with the mayor and local business leaders serving on the committee
I have
and
no
the facility.
issue. Yeah, no issue with that. I think
So
they're all
if we don't approve these community leaders at this meeting tonight, then we're going to hold up the DFP process that we have planned. We've communicated out to folks in the district to attend, and so I'm just not sure, with KDE telling me that we're above board, we're within compliance of all the things that we've talked about, why we would not move forward with that.
Let me just be clear. I assumed the advertisement was to advertise for folks to be on the committee. And so I guess I assumed, and I probably should have asked, in the advertisement, is it saying, hey, would you like to be a volunteer on this committee? Please submit your name to this person by this time at this day. And if that's the case, I'm not sure that happened. If it ran this morning, but we already had the list put together before the advertisement even ran. So I guess that's my concern about that.
Okay. The advertisement was provided by Mr. Tim Eaton, former superintendent of Pulaski County Schools. He facilitates these LPC meetings continuously. He provided the advertisement. Nothing in the advertisement stated anywhere about what you just referenced. So the advertisement as he provided ran today in today's Woodford Sun. I don't know what else to do with it. So
I'll say I appreciate you reaching out to KDE and getting their approval and getting that. I think that this plan is important to move ahead. I understand it is running an ad and voting on it the same day, isn't probably what we want to do in all situations, but I know that we have a sense of urgency to get this process started. So sometimes might have to make allowances for that to move forward on things. Not the best scenario ever, but I don't think we can wait on this so that we can get the process started.
Can I ask what would happen if we didn't approve it today? What is the urgency besides it just being correct and being able to include the middle school roof and some things like that were overlooked?
if you didn't approve it today, it would have to be approved at obviously another meeting. I have to submit the roster to KDE. They have to turn it around and have it approved before our first meeting. So then that affects the timeline for everything
And you have the first meeting scheduled for next week,
for the 16th.
for
Correct.
next Thursday.
And you have to have like 10 meetings in a certain amount of time, right?
It's not, yeah, they're fewer than 10, but we have to
Fewer
have,
than 10,
yeah. With the LPC,
Decide to leave the committee.
yeah, right. Well, and that is part of the process, right? So, we've already got the committee chosen. Otherwise, we've communicated the first two meeting dates. We have to have 10 to have a quorum to have a meeting count, just like any other public meeting. And so my fear would be, I think it's going to be challenging at best to have 10 folks at every one of these meetings on a compressed time frame anyway. So
What happens to the existing committee, the one that was appointed for the 4 years? What happens to them? Do they get like a note in the mail saying, we've appointed a new committee, you're out?
well, their service to the committee was finished upon final approval and voting of whatever happened back in 2020. And after telling Mr. Least at KDE what we're planning on doing, he said you need to reconvene a new LPC committee and go through the selection process. So that's what we did. So
And then also when I was reviewing that, it made it seem like, I think it specifically stated, the K-Fix and the facilities plan are two separate things.
correct.
So you don't have to do a new plan just to do a K-Fix, and you don't have to do a K-Fix just to do a new plan. They're totally separate things. And I guess another question I had was, so the LPC is done, or the district facilities plan is done every 40 years. Ours isn't due until 2025. And is there some sort of a schedule that they have districts on so that, because I guess the point of the committee is to do the plan, the point of the plan is there's one pot of money in odd years that all the districts get to their unmet needs, they get to get out of that pot of money and have the restricted funds. And so I guess my concern is that, number one, I guess it's not really our time to be doing that, but you say that that's okay, that they've approved that, so I understand that. But in doing that, would we not have to take off the projects that have already been bonded? So would the new high school not come off the plan at this point?
The new high school won't be on the plan. Once you create a BG1 for a project, it's removed from the district facility plan.
So if you take a $70-some million project off, then I don't understand how the facility plan, we would get more money for doing it, because it's based on the total amount of dollars that you have on there. So if we're taking a $70 million project off and subbing in
Well,
$1 million roof, then we're losing.
The high school is not on your last DFP. The BG1 was created in 2019, and so therefore it was not on the last DFP plan that was created.
I think it is. Can you
Well,
pull that up?
the existing high school building is on there, but the new high school facility is
Yeah,
not.
it speaks of
repairs.
renovating and repairing the current high school.
That's correct.
I think the facilities plan includes the new high school still, the one that we have that's current, that's active. Let me, I'll check it real quick.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, you know, I met with Kelly Mersich last week with Baird, our fiscal agent. So the new biennium, our unmet facility need, we would get a reallocation in January of next year if we get this DFP done this year. So that is, as we discussed, one of the big reasons that we wanted to redo that this year. So.
I thought it was on, is it on the district website?
Yeah, and I'm on the KDE website right now to look at that too. But again, if you're taking a $70 million project off and subbing in $1 million project, then your need obviously is gonna.
And I completely agree with that. However, I can guarantee you that new high school is not on that unmet need on that district facility plan. The existing building with possible potential renovations are on there. If I'm not mistaken, the district unmet need is somewhere around $19 million on that district facility plan.
There it is. It's pulled up here, Sherry.
Oh, thank you. Can you? Yeah, that's the old one. And then does it have the middle school roof on there?
Go back up to the middle school.
Do we have middle school on there?
No,
I thought it was up.
no, it's not. Middle school's
I
not
don't
on there at
see
all.
Middle school on there. So this is the plan from 2021.
2020, yeah, 2021, yes.
Thank you for pulling it. I found it on the KDE site. So you think adding the middle school roof and, are you planning on, oh, here's the middle school, it is on there. Oh, athletic concessions. Because they put them in different categories, I guess, based on what you're allowed to spend money on and.
correct.
the needs. So you think adding the middle school roof is the main reason that we're doing this, opening this back up, or do you see other?
Well, but you mentioned the K-Fix. Based on the information I've gotten preliminarily from the high school and one other school, there were some issues with. So the need for these things is driven predominantly by dates when renovations occurred and those types of things. And there was some pretty significant issues with some of the dates based on how this was done. So, you know, I can't assign a monetary value to it, but I do think that it's going to be very important that we get it updated correctly and the things added, because I think there's potentially more than just the middle school roof and some issues with the existing high school that were misconstrued on that. I think just my experience with the $19 million unmet need, I think that number is significantly low. For example, in Franklin, with essentially double the schools we had about $100 million unmet need there. So that significantly impacts the amount of money you get through the state for your facilities. So I think it's definitely worth our time and investment to redo this and get this thing straightened out so that we have a good plan. When we get bonding capacity back to some degree and we have a good priority of what we need to spend those dollars on.
And right now, even after redoing the plan, we're not gonna have the bonding capacity to be able to tackle these projects unless we use general funds, is that correct?
Correct. There's no bonding capacity as we stand here today. We presented that schedule back in the summer when we sold the bonds. We're fairly optimistic that we will have bonding capacity much sooner than what the schedules that we had to reflect are, just because of the way things change over time. And we put those estimates out very conservatively. So I do feel like that in the coming years that we will be able to establish our bonding capacity quicker than what the estimates reflected. And then there could always be other changes that would impact that as well, so.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the information, and again, we did the advertisement today, but we have the list of folks before we even did the advertisement, and you want to vote on the committee before folks have a chance to contact and volunteer for it?
These folks volunteered for serving on the committee, so.
That's actually just our recommendation. I mean, it's up to you guys whether you vote on it or
And
not.
again, the advertisement did not specifically call for volunteers to apply to anything.
That's correct.
And this is the same way that we advertised for it when we did it in 2020.
I believe so. Mr. Eaton did the committee then, so. Yep.
So I would suggest, if there's no other questions on the LPC committee, which is what this item is for, that we vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
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 The motion passes 3-2.
And I just want to be clear, I have no problem with the volunteers that were selected or volunteered. My issue is just making sure that we are following the process and that, you know, if we're supposed to advertise for volunteers, that's something that.
Okay, so noted, and I think Mr. Smith was very clear that everything had been worked through with KDE, and he felt like everything was appropriate and approved by that group. So, moving on, the next item is item C, approve the amendment of 2022-2023 school year calendar. It's Mr. Wells?
Yeah, Mr. Wells, basically what Mr. Wells made me aware of this week as we have tried to navigate the storms, damage, power outages, those types of things, is that we do have just a small amount of room to work on some things. So I'm going to let him explain that to you.
Yeah, a little wiggle room. As you know, school is called off next Wednesday for the state tournament, which is a special day for our student athletes. And we definitely want our staff and our students and our community there supporting the team. So if we just go by the regular calendar that was approved last year, the makeup day for that day would be the day after Memorial Day. So the day after Memorial Day would then be our last day of school. So without any adjustment, that's what it would be. What we can do is take the April early release day and make that a full day. And if we do that, then the day we would miss on Wednesday wouldn't necessarily need to be made up. It would need to be made up for our employees because of contractual obligations, but for students it wouldn't. So we would still get out the Friday before Memorial Day. Just a quick calendar summary. We have to go 176-hour days and get 1,062 hours. Our current calendar, we go 175 days, but 5 of those are early release days. And so by calling off school Wednesday, that brings us down to 169 full days. By making the early release day a full day, it brings us back up to 170 full days. We are well over the requirements in hours. We're probably 5 days worth of hours, I think 32 hours above. If we do that change that we're requesting, we are 32 hours above the 1,062 threshold. So in summary, that's what we're asking, is to make the April early release day a full day, and that would keep us getting out on Friday before Memorial Day.
Mr. Wells, did you say that teachers would have to come back after Memorial Day?
Well, they're still,
Or they would in the first place?
there are still contractual obligations for all of our employees. So while the students wouldn't necessarily have to come back, our teachers are 188 days, and so that day would need to be made up somewhere. And Mr. Atkins and I talked today about some possibilities. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be that day. What we want to do is give our employees, 4, 5, 6 options of when to make up that day. But yes, they would have to work that day at some point in the calendar.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the amendment of the 2022-2023 school year calendar?
Before we do the motion, can we decide how will it work for the second part of the request?
So, thank you for reminding me that
Yeah,
it,
just
it,
make sure
it was
there's
it was a
exactly-
2-part request. Someone who's superstitious, I hate to jinx us, but should we win on Wednesday, the way the bracket plays out, we are in the exact same boat on Friday. We would play the 11 o'clock game. We wouldn't have a night game. And so the second part of that request is the board's support of, rather than having to come back later, the board's support of doing the same thing I just talked about in April with our next early release day, which is the last day of school. I know the last day is a popular day to have an early release day, but if we win on Wednesday and play again on Friday and do the same thing, then that would again allow us to get out the last day of school being the Friday before Memorial Day and not having to come back after Memorial Day. So not asking you to make that change, but giving us the flexibility, the autonomy to do that should our boys win on Wednesday.
So then I guess the motion would really be to approve that first day in April as a full day, and then I guess maybe prior approval or agreement
And
that.
approval contingent upon, yes.
Yeah, contingent upon, of course, we're gonna win the need for that Friday that will take the next day, the last day of school to
Yes,
make
ma'am.
that up.
And then the understanding would be that you will survey or speak with staff, teachers, and figure out a plan for making up either one or both of those.
Yes.
That's acceptable, because I know some people probably have vacation plans and things
Yeah.
scheduled, thinking that we were gonna be,
Yeah.
getting off.
I think our intent is to give some, like I say, several options, some creative options where they will be able to complete their contract.
Thank you, that's perfect.
Yes.
So is there a motion then to approve the amendment of the 2022-2023 school calendar?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. McCowan,
Second.
second by Ms. Springate. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Go Jackets.
Well, and I do have one request. I'm hopeful that Mr. Atkins or someone can let folks know immediately about the plans, but also if there's some way to kind of communicate, how these NTI days are working, what's kind of going on. I know there's just been a lot of, upset, anger, confusion, and I think it's always good to just kind of go through and say, this is how we do it, this is our thinking, this is what this means, if anybody has suggestions or input, that's always good to hear.
Okay, item 5, the reason for the season is our data review discussion, and Mr. Asher is going to lead us through that.
The presentation to you early. There are 54 slides. I do not intend to speak to every one of those, but I know that you wanted some breakdowns by school, by grade level. So as I go through these, I'll stop at the summary slide, so to speak, and then if you have any specific questions, we can take those. But let me go through this, our agenda, what we'll be doing. I want to talk about just our improvement cycle. You've heard me say MTSS quite often, and I just want to show you how that relates to the data that we're looking at today. State accountability, the major piece of that being the KSA, Kentucky Summative Assessment, a series of other assessment data that we'll go through, including our AP, our current results on that, as well as dual credit. Universal screener, and I'll explain that when we get there, and then also our mental health data for both students and staff. As I mentioned, our MTSS process, and I think all of you have seen this flow chart that we use month in and month out. We meet as a district level team, and the arrows there going back and forth. Notice two-way arrows for two-way communication. It says right there, data should be shared in both directions. So each month, our principals are members of our district MTSS team, as well as several folks from the district office. And then that information flow goes down to both school level teams, as well as our integrated mental health and wellness team, and then on down to other various types of school level committees or teams. An example, one way that we close every district level meeting is to highlight or emphasize, here's what we discussed in March, and that's what you should take back to your school. And oftentimes we'll fill in there what should go back to the school level, given the season or what may be specific at that time. And that informs our basic continuous improvement process where you plan, do, study, and act. And it's over and over. The first piece that I want to go through is our state accountability system. Oftentimes people think that is just the what used to be CATS, what used to be K-Prep. There's more to it. There are many different indicators or components of that is a better word. First off is the state assessment results. That's KSA, Kentucky Summative Assessment in Reading and Math. That's given at grades 3 through 8, and then again at grade 10. Take reading and math. Then you have your other areas of science, social studies, and writing. Science is given in 4th, 7th, and 11th. Social studies is given in 5th, 8th, and 11th. And writing is also in 5th, 8th, and 11th. So when we get to those specifically, when we look at indexes and percentages, just keep in mind, oftentimes it may just be one grade level at a given elementary or middle or high school. A new component this year, and we talked a lot about this at our CDIP meetings, is the English learner progress. The access test has been around since I've been in this, as far as the English language proficiency exam, but it's never been part of the accountability system, and now it is. So it heightens the importance of that exam and of that preparation. Post-secondary readiness, formerly known as transition readiness. So obviously that's a high school element, and I'll show you some data on that. Quality of school climate and safety. This is a new aspect of accountability. That is based on the student survey that they take. All what I rattled off up there, all those students take a survey related to climate and safety. And then finally, graduation rate, which has remained a component of accountability through all the various systems we've seen over the years. All right, all of that together, here is the cover page of our school report card. These performance levels, performance ratings are then put into a color system, and obviously it goes from low to high. Our elementary combined puts us in the green, middle school, of course, one middle school in the green, and our high school in the yellow. And what I plan to take you through is various graphs and visuals to show how we landed as an overall performance rating in each of those areas. All right, so let me take a little bit of time because there are numerous of these to explain what you're looking at. So this is the overall index of an elementary school, color coded. And here are the cut scores. If they were a below a 35, they're going to be down here in the red. If they were above 35 but not yet to 53, they're orange, so on and so forth. The bar graphs that you see here are the percentage of Kentucky elementary schools in that category. So if we look right here in the middle, 41.5% of elementary schools were in the yellow, okay? And all of the graphs that we see are gonna look like this. Now, what you'll see here are our elementary schools, color-coded and with their index. This is not a percentage of proficient or novice, any of those, although those do play into that mathematical calculation to get that index score. So what we see here is that we had two schools in the yellow, Northside and Simmons. However, if you look at that cut score to get to green, they were literally 0.1 and they were 0.5 to get over that, to get to 670, I should say. And then we had two schools here, Huntertown and Southside. Huntertown knocking on the door of going up to blue, reaching that 79 cut score. But that's a tough crowd to get to. That's only nearly 9% of the schools, of all elementary schools in the state. So like I said, we're going to go through numerous, but just know what all of those numbers mean. All right, then we'll look at each of the areas. Here's reading and math. I won't go over the cut scores each time. We'll just look at where our schools landed. Northside and Simmons here fell within the 36% of all elementaries in that area. Once again, that cut score, I forgot to look at this one, but just tenths of a point away from moving to the green to join Huntertown and Southside. The other indicator, and again, this is where you're talking about just one grade level at each of these schools. See a pattern here, although Huntertown did make it into the blue area there, their writing scores really stood out and bumped them up into that range. And please just stop if you have questions, okay? Moving on to the English learner progress, what I mentioned is a new component. It is a little bit more difficult for us. I know that is an emphasis for Huntertown right now, obviously falling there. What you'll notice is only two schools are labeled here. That is because the other two did not have the required number to be reported. You have to have, I believe that's also 30 for this. I know it is for the content area assessments to be reported. Those students from Northside and Southside are in our cumulative for the district, although they're not reported separately because they don't meet those numbers.
As in number of students?
Correct. Number of English learners taking that assessment. I'd also, while we're on that, I want to point out that this is the one area where, so we're used to third on up testing. English learner progress, we're actually talking about first on up. Because they take that assessment really starting in kindergarten, but a major aspect of it is their growth from one year to the next. So kindergarten, that's their first year taking it. It's not going to count. They're not going to be able to show growth until they take it again in first. And actually, that's been done already. The season for access testing is in January, February.
Mr. Asher?
Yes.
Can you tell me again how does a student qualify for the English learner?
Yeah. It starts off the home language survey, oftentimes in kindergarten or upon entry. And if there's another language spoken in the home, that starts the process of a screening process and then on to the assessment. And that is done by our EL teachers at each school and with the team.
Got it. Thank you.
School climate. So again, this is that survey that I mentioned. All of our schools fall within what would be the majority here of the state. What's that say? 36.8. And you'll see the school climate indicators there. On to middle school. Cut scores are going to be different. These were set at the state level. Same kind of layout here. 40%, 0.6 of middle schools fell within the yellow. WCMS fell within the green range in the upper, that's 17 plus 10, 27% of schools with a 63. Just eked over that line to fall green. When we get to reading and math, they fell at a 66.8, so within the upper level once again. Science, social studies, and writing within the upper level once again. English learner progress is an area of growth for them. We did not, or yes, we are indeed, TIS, thank you. TSI, acronym mix-up. TSI, and so we have additional plans to address that area. One of which we already proactively, we knew was an issue when we restructured our staffing to start the year. And then down here to school climate, interesting that kind of both these categories as far as statewide, both right at 34%. We fell at 66.7. On to the high school. High school fell within yellow. The cut score, as you can see, very close to that to move into the green. They were what, just 1.3 away of crossing that threshold, but here fell within the majority of high schools across the state. Reading and math, they fell in this category of green. Science, social studies, and writing fell within the orange, but I'll point out that that was obviously an issue across the state there. I do know that our science in particular, and they have put plans in place for that, were not very good. You'll see that on the school breakdown if a little bit later. English learner progress. We are also TSI for this category, much like the middle school. Again, proactively put several strategies in place to address that, but I will point out that that seems to be a challenge across the state. School climate, we fell right here in the middle in yellow at a 60.5. The two unique categories to high school we're looking at here is our post-secondary readiness at an 86, so just short of meeting that cut score to get to the green. I do think with our emphasis that we're putting there through our, we talked a lot about this with CDIP, I do look for that to increase. There's numerous factors that play into that. And then our graduation rate remains relatively high and landed us in the green category there. That is it in terms of indexes. And then there are numerous slides, lots of numbers, and this is what I'm referring to that I won't go over in detail unless you have questions. What I do want to point out is that all of these I did put in state averages because I always think that's important just to get perspective. So the highlight in white underneath that are state averages. What you're looking at, what we typically gauge ourselves upon is the combined percentage of proficient distinguished and your percentage of novice in each category. And then we've also broken it down by student group. The vast majority, there will be some, particularly at our secondary levels that are below state average, but in the vast majority of instances, we are above state averages. So we obviously want our novice to be lower and our combined proficient distinguished to be higher. Sometimes you'll see NAs on here. That again refers to there wasn't an adequate number to report. So here, go ahead.
I think the thing for me that really stands out is when you look at the breakdowns, there's just a lot of work that needs to go on with our gap groups.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have a slide that compares last year's rates, percentages, numbers to this year's.
I do not for this specific, no.
Okay, just as far as kind of trends,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are we doing worse this year, better this year? Is it mixed? Is that something you can kind of share with us later?
I could find that out for you, yes, particularly with trends. I will say it's a challenge nonetheless, and that's not only here, but that's again why I want to compare that to state averages. It is always a challenge. It breaks down to our equity work in many ways, and what additional needs are there, and how do we meet those to not only help basic needs but also academic needs. So yes, that particularly. There are some that stand out, but again, I will say that it's a challenge across the board in many ways. but I can follow up with some trend data on that.
I was just gonna.
It's not going to be comparing apples to apples.
Right.
And they've added a new component as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Last year would be similar as far as tests, but if you also remember last year, we were even participation because some students were virtual. We did very well with that. We were in the 90-some percent, getting 90-some percent of our students tested. So we've got a good set of data to pull from. But nonetheless, yes, I can pull trend data on that.
It would just be interesting to kind of know, but I do realize, and that's a good note to put in there, that, of the kinds of the challenges. I just think overall, as a nation, I think we just saw some articles coming out about reading and math and lowest levels in 20 years. And so, like, nationwide, I know it's an issue. And Kentucky is not in the top states educationally, on measures. And so it just really does. It concerns me. And obviously, I feel like, summer school, after school tutoring, smaller classroom sizes, more teachers, making sure teachers have support, reading and math interventionalists, all of those things, I think are very much supported by data, especially when you're looking at, our free and reduced lunch kids, our English language learners, our disabled children, our different groups, Hispanic, African American. I just want to make sure that as a board, we're acknowledging and understanding that these numbers are
I do
not-
think it's pretty encouraging, though, that in most cases, and I do have a question to follow this, in most cases, we are better than the state average. And maybe that doesn't mean much to, but I think that's a good sign that the work that we're doing here, we're doing something different and something that's working here from across the state. The question that I do have, and you mentioned it from an equity perspective, is the equity team then shifting a focus or starting to focus more? And when you do look at sort of the economically disadvantaged, and then the IEP totals are really where it looks like maybe we need to look at something maybe different. So how does that play into some of those activities?
Yeah, and I mentioned on the English learner some of the proactive things that was also done. Disability students with IEP and Miss Francis. Yes. If you want to speak to any of this, proactively, really before numbers even came out, the number of students identified for special education are going up. The needs under special education are going up. So proactively, they had put several things in place, whether it be staffing, leadership positions, particularly at the secondary level. And then beyond that, if you could talk to the, not the cohort, but co-op.
Oh, okay. So,
SDI.
yeah.
Pull up a chair.
I don't know if I'm that important. There's several different things we did. Everything from restructuring, so we have a lead person, a lead teacher in place at the secondary level, to looking at our co-op, our regional co-op for support. So they're doing a bunch of supportive groups across the state. And one of the main focus that we're all looking at across the state is delivery of specially designed instruction, which is exactly what special education is. That's what it means. That's the definition of it. And so making sure that we are doing intentional instruction with fidelity and what specially designed instruction actually looks like for each IEP and each individual student, and knowing what, being versed in your skill. So what is SDI and what types of SDI is available? There is a huge focus on that through CKEC, and we're part of a cohort. And so part of that is I've sent 3 lead teachers in the district to go to these ongoing trainings throughout the year. CKEC then has also sent back and came to us, and we have completed walkthroughs with those 3, as well as with a person from CKEC, and sat down and looked at the feedback process of what we are actually doing, what we saw that was really good, what we have some work to do in. And then this work will also continue into the summer and then into next school year to focus on that. And that's district-wide. So that, when you're looking at your middle school group, it's a tricky group because you have to look at what we are getting from our elementary schools and what that data looks like, and then what the data is trending and looking like in the middle school, and then what that is giving our high school, okay? So there's a huge process in that middle school data. The middle school is a hard time. So slipping, and I do see this as barely slipping into TSI compared to some other data I've looked at. We've slipped into that, but that is, I'm not terribly upset over it. I mean, I'm upset if any of my students or data slips, but for that group to go through COVID and hit middle school and then it barely be into this area, I do think, processing and learning how to learn again and moving forward, that's going to be the group that we're going to have to continue to focus on. But again, I do think we're going to have to put some structures and procedures in place and some support in place, looking at some of our structures, everything from co-teaching to how we do co-teaching to resource time and where that SDI is delivered at, the setting as well as the type of SDI. So we've had a whole process. We've been working on it. That's what we've done through, just an example, through the co-op. That's one thing we've done. Through the district level, we have a very strategic process we've been going through. Name and claim students, looking at data individually, looking at pairing that with the teacher at the middle school, and working through that process as well.
Are you doing like additional, just on any TSI things, Mr. Asher? Do we have to do additional things and supply that to KDE? How does that work exactly? Because I mean, I'm familiar, I know it's not good, obviously, because of the colors, but I'm just not sure what that means for the district, what additional things we have to do when we slip into those categories of TSI.
So TSI it's really at the school level. So they had to do additional TSI plans. As far as the special ed goes, a lot of the stuff that she just mentioned is on there. A lot of what, although there's a lot more, as far as English language learners, a lot of those CDIP activities that I went through are also on the TSI plan, with a few additional things, particularly at the middle school. But it gets obviously more serious when you're CSI, and that's when district gets held accountable a little bit more. At this point, their school level plans, although we certainly support that. And we facilitated, I call them TSI same page meetings, where the three of us visited both high school and middle school. We had all the representatives, special education leaders, as well as the EL teachers, and we were all in the room together, making sure we're on the same page in terms of what those strategies and activities are.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Thank you.
I had one question too.
Yeah.
So seeing as how the English learner progress and some of the disadvantage fall short of some of the other areas, what do you think the biggest need is? As far, I mean, you guys have great programs, you're putting things in place, but as far as, man, if we just had like this extra resource or this something, because I love looking at the data and it helps support a lot of things. I also like to think of next step, like, okay, now we know we have this data, we see that there's this need, but like from your perspective, like what is that thing that you?
If I had that answer, I would write a book
Okay, all right.
and make a lot of money.
Okay.
Because it is a need nationwide and beyond. Really, though, what we're trying to do is put a different lens to it. And I've mentioned this before, I think, with our equity playbook that we're doing. And it's not just like, oh, they need more small group instruction, they need more intervention. Like that's a typical answer. We're trying to look at how are they connected to school, what extracurriculars are they involved in, parent engagement. So kind of a different aspect. What are we missing on those things? And just trying to be creative there. But again, if I had that answer, I'd write a book.
And I guess I'm just coming from the board perspective. Of,
Sure.
What can we do to support you?
Yeah.
So those new lenses that you're looking through, do you have the resources or the ability to focus on those new lenses?
To this point, yeah, if there's a resource needed, we've been able to fund it.
Okay.
Yes, we have.
Data is prior to you guys given the extra position, and so we did extra staffing last year. We haven't seen what the results of that are gonna be, so that, that is support that has been given previously.
Are you speaking of the EL teacher? Yeah.
But
Yeah.
maybe even some of the mental health resources and some of the other things that we've done, maybe
Oh.
some of that can.
And even, I'm glad you mentioned that. When I said put a different perspective or lens on it, through the equity playbook, one of our middle school guidance counselors, she doesn't, and they don't refer themselves, the Hispanic students there. So what's the disconnect there? How can she support them through the guidance office to ultimately help achievement overall, whether it's academic or just overall whole child achievement? So that's another example. Once you said that, it reminded me.
That's
you very much.
sort of a follow-up too that I had along those same lines is just in terms of the resources, the people, to help and work with all of these students, especially with our special ed students. You feel like that we're in a good place with that, or, are there some elementary schools that, where they could use some additional support and some additional.
Go ahead on the special ed aspect, sure.
I do think, he is correct. We're looking at a nationwide issue here, but looking at what we need here is what I'm concerned about. I do think going into next year, we may have to look at some additional pieces. I think we've had to put some additional staff in place this year. This is my 6th year, and this is probably, that's more staff than I've ever had. I'm really good at projecting my staff and not having to add and add and add or anything, because I don't think that's good for anyone to, for our students to have to get familiar with you and then move over here to you and work. So that's something that I have always worked really hard on. I do think some of our structures are going to have to be more intentional, looking at those resource versus that co-teach structure. Attend some really good training with Dr. Marilyn Friend, who is the guru of it, last week at the National CEC, and took a team for them to hear it as well. And I do think, when you're looking at delivery of SDI, that setting is where it's at. Where are they going to get their bang for the buck? They need access to core just like all of our other students, and hearing that general education core content, and then being able to deliver that in our Kagan setup or whatnot. And our structures here in Woodford County, Kagan lends right into the good co-teaching, and that's where we really want to move with our secondary population into that focus more so. That's going to also help support our students be more successful with post-secondary outcomes and how they perform in settings of workplace settings and environments like that as well. So, that is, I do think, to answer your question, that's a lot of information I overshare sometimes, but, special education is that way. I do think we will have to add some additional staff. I don't think it's going to be a huge amount, but I cannot cap out my teachers. They can't start the year at the top because they don't have any room to grow. And we have grown here, and it's grown a lot since I've been here.
I think
So,
that too. Well, at least that's what I've heard, at least just in talking to people, the kids that are, a lot of the kids that are coming to school now, they may have started kindergarten or something like that during COVID, and it's such a big adjustment for them. So that I think that our schools are seeing lots of things that typically, it would have been a smaller percentage before that. So I just wonder how we, what we need to do to help support all of the kids that are in the schools, those that have some extra needs and those that are.
Yep. Do that.
Thank you.
Keep us updated.
So this is an example. I wasn't going to go through each of these, but these are all percentages related to KSA, okay? And there are the numerous slides if you want to look at those, or if you have questions on those. So I'll close that part. And are there any other questions? All right, next section is our ACT. We just had that yesterday. Yeah, my goodness. And we've gone back to testing our sophomores as well. This would only be junior data, because that's the required grade level that we take it at. Once again, I've put in state average next to that. You'll see this is from last spring as well, just the overall data there. We did have a pretty good jump. We are above state averages pretty significantly. Of course, this is a different scale. We're talking about different numbers than what we saw previously. Again, and I wanted to say this on the last one. I put in state averages just for perspective, just so we know where we stand. Obviously, we want to be well above average, and that is our goal. But I do think it's important just to know where you stand among the others. So again, this is our ACT breakdown. We will see. We had positive administration of it yesterday, very smooth. Miss Best and crew over there at the high school did a great job. We were over there all day, and Miss Tracy was back there again today for any makeups, but expecting another jump this year.
I did hear great things about how it was handled yesterday, by the way. I had one taking it, so and I think that's a great opportunity for all of our sophomores that we give them, and I don't think that's something that everybody sees across the state too. So I think that's those are all really good things, and I'm sure that's what drives a lot of those higher scores as well.
Yeah, that's something we reinstituted. They had started the COVID year, like literally right before we shut down, the world shut down. They were both levels were testing. Then we did it optional, and we would reimburse, but we're going back to across the board now, both grade levels.
Do you know, since they just took it yesterday, do you know when you'll get like an updated?
I think it takes.
Like
Do you
couple
know?
months?
That's a great
Couple
question.
months
I'm a rookie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
It's
And it
4
might
to
be
6
longer than
weeks.
state
I want to
average.
say.
Yeah, that's what
My
I
kids were
thought.
asking me too. I have 2 sophomores, so they were asking, but I think it's 4 to 6.
There was a district assessment coordinator meeting today, but I was in another meeting, so I watched it on playback. So I might have that answer tomorrow for you, but I'm not sure.
The next category relates to CTE, Career and Tech Ed, the end of program assessment. It's a little bit small. Well, it's not that small when the screen's in your face, but what you're looking at here is the state pass rates, what the WCHS pass rates, and then increase or decrease from the previous year. Some up, some down. Also, what you'll see is the number of students that took it. So 37 out of 56 met the pass rate, so on and so forth. And some of these, as you'll see here, is the first year for that exam. So obviously, students have picked up that course. And this one here, first time in many years for someone to take environmental or natural resources. Okay. Next category, advanced placement, AP courses. Here's some trend data over time. Number of students with scores of a 3 or more increase from 21 to 22, 61%. And over there is the raw data in terms of total number of students in the table on the right. I'll give you a second to look over that.
I meant to mention, and I'm sorry, on the CTE program, just so excited to see all the things that we're doing and so much focus being given to that. I think it's so important, and I'm thrilled at everything we've been doing.
Yeah, plug on, I believe it's April 12th. Is that a Wednesday or is it April 15th? What was scheduled to be early release. They're doing a career expo.
I saw that.
At the high school
Yeah.
that Ms. Sherman's put together. She's our career readiness coordinator. So a lot of business and industry partners will be there that day. So excited about that.
Yep.
This is a breakdown of the AP trend all the way back to 2015-16. You'll see there of percentage of students scoring 3 or higher by course. Next category we want to go through is just our dual credit, and you'll see an increase over time, and that would be statewide. Just the push for this, the allowing this, and what's that?
The paying for it.
Yeah, exactly. So it has increased each and every year. I did notice, and 268 students, and so our number of students when enrolled, but not at. There are multiple students. There's students taking multiple classes, which a higher number there, so a little bit lower there. But overall, we do have more students enrolled. There are our current partners. We're always back and forth with them, adding new programming or new courses, I should say. with each of those partners. And then just overall, this data is a little old, but ultimately it comes down to what a savings that is for them to pick up credits for free during high school, or at a reduced rate if they've run out of their scholarships, as compared to what it is after high school. All right, switching gears tremendously. We just talking about AP and dual credit there, down to kindergarten. Where we're going to go through here, and this is somewhere there's probably more here than what I'll review, are universal screeners. So universal screeners are those assessments we give 3 times a year: fall, winter, spring, to more so progress monitor and see what students, this goes back to MTSS, multi-tier systems of support, what students need that tier 2 or tier 3 support. We did something different this year for kindergarten. We did ESGI. It's an assessment program we've had, but it really focuses on foundational skills. And that was intentional because someone mentioned kindergartners coming in with greater needs. We want to make sure that they have foundational skills to build upon moving into first grade and beyond. The color coding, blue exceeds expectations, so they met 90% or above. Green is meets expectations, P progressing, and N not yet demonstrated. So really, anything from yellow and above, we're making progress, because you can see there the range is 0 to 69. And so there are quite a number of visuals that you'll see here, and the colors tell you the story. Here's fall, and here's winter. And so different categories. When I say foundational skills, we're talking about blending of sounds. In the fall, you'll see the high number of students that were not meeting that benchmark, and only the little bit of 12% of blue exceeding, and you'll see a big increase from fall to winter. Initial sounds, what is that sound that dog starts with? Duh, identifying that, you'll see, the big increase there. Final sounds, same thing. Uppercase letters, lowercase, uppercase sounds, lowercase sounds. Really proud of that progress on those foundational skills in reading. Math, same sort of thing. Number recognition, patterning from fall to winter, shapes. Count to tell the number of objects. So there are a number of objects on paper that they have to count. There's 5 frogs there, what have you, and counting to 30. Tremendous growth across all those foundational skills. The other universal screener, which you're very familiar with, we use as MAP. We use MAP in 1st through 8th right now. We are looking at some changes. I will talk about those later. And it's more so an elementary focus to build off that foundational skill focus that I mentioned, but we'll talk about that at a later time. What I want to show here, I think I've had this question a couple times, is, how does this relate to pre-COVID? This is where we left off before the world shut down, as I mentioned. We took winter MAP in the end of 19. So at that point in time, 68% of our students were at 50th percentile above on MAP. The one difference I'll point out, that was only 2nd through 8th. First K and 1 were taking a primary version of MAP at that time. And here we are most recently at 57% of students at 50th percentile and above. So significant difference there, 11%. I will say, although there's a 4% difference, not as far off in what we consider our tier 3 students, 7% at that point in time, and at 11 right now. Only thing different in colors is we've kind of teased out what is the yellow range here. Now we have a yellow and a light green, which means they're approaching proficiency. That's just a change in how we look at data that we made over time, so we get a little more accurate picture. So that's a reading comparison of pre to current data. And then there are a number of these. Again, this is what I refer to, so if you just have any questions of these, I'll go through these quickly, but this is a breakdown by grade level. And then similar in math, not as much of a significant difference from pre-COVID till now, 62% at 50th percentile and above, and 58% there. Same kind of aspect where it's 2nd through 8th here and 1st through 8th. So that's our map math. And then again, you have your grade level charts. I will point out, and I won't go through all this, but when I talk about MTSS, Amy Oates is fantastic at data management and just the visuals and putting this all together. She has become very well versed at what is called a data studio. And we're going to look at one a little bit later for mental health. It's a Google product, and she is pretty good at it. From that previous slide, there was one for each school. So it really, once it loads here, maybe. Go away. There we go. All right. So schools are given this dashboard. She pulls everything from MAP, and then you can break it down by grade. You know, so if I just want to do only third grade, my visual changes, boom. So this is good for MTSS teams. It's good for site-based committees, and just you can manipulate it right there. All the data that has been pulled into this, because oftentimes you look at those, especially in this kind of setting, you look at all those numbers but I think the visuals and the graphs and the colors really help. So that's been a great tool for our MTSS process. And like I said, she creates those for each school to break down. CERT. CERT is our universal screener. Now, granted, we only give this twice at high school. What you'll see here, CERT, College Equipped Readiness Tool. They first started this last year, yes, and continue in this year, and I think their intention is to continue with it next year. This is ACT prep in many ways. What you're looking at here are a breakdown by each of the areas, and 14 is the benchmark for freshmen, 18 for everybody else. That's what the parentheses they mean there. And what I've done is just I've highlighted if it's an increase of 5% more from fall to winter, or a decrease of 5% or more. So we did have some significant increases. Those percent at benchmark still not where we wanted at. One of our challenges, particularly with high school students, is motivation, and that it means something. And just what we call, it's a breakdown of, is it skill or will? And many times it's a breakdown of will. They really emphasize that on winter, that this is important. This means something. Take your time. We have reports that show how long it took them to take the assessment, and encourage those students a little bit stronger. Like I said, they will continue to use this. Ultimately, the most important data that we get from related to this would be the ACT data. And as you can see, based on, like average composite here, we were much higher in that when on the real deal.
Do you think it's useful? I don't know if there's a cost associated. I know there's a time associated. Do you think it's useful to continue with this?
I do. We had that conversation with the high school just to see ACT-like questions. They're also, and some of them do take advantage of it on an individual basis. Students can, it develops a path if they want to work on their science score. There is individual work assigned to them that they can complete. There's a cost, obviously. It's not, I wouldn't call it minimal, but it's not a huge cost for what we get out of it. So I do think, and they share the same sentiment, that they do think it's useful and at least a level of accountability and measurement for their students. All right, changing gears now from academic data, mental health log. So anytime counselors spend roughly 15 minutes with the student on one of the following issues, they complete a mental health log, and you'll see the list there. And this is an example. This is just the, I think, yeah, we can go to the whole data studio if needed. But this is an example. So what we're looking at here is there were 4,750, now we're talking K through 12, of those entries made. If a counselor spent 15 minutes or more. Here's a breakdown of, this is, I don't know what kind of chart you'd call this, but you can see the majority are, anybody know what it's called? No. A box chart? That sounds good. We'll go with that. Darn it.
The box chart.
Yeah.
Touch screen, you
Gets you every time.
Sure does. As I was saying, 6th, 8th, 7th, middle school where most of the referrals come from. So that's what that represents there. Male, female is really close. Ethnicity breakdown, referral source. That means they were referred, they self-referred, or it's a continuing follow-up, or what's over here, teacher, parent, guardian. So the referral source, and then if they have individual service plans, and oftentimes there are no individual service plans. It's a gen ed type student. Any questions on that? And this is another example with Data Studio. They can break it down by their school, and we do those activities through our counselor meetings and our MTSS as well.
So I think you mentioned that it was mostly in the middle school
Yeah.
area. That so are we, based on that and the number of minutes that were spent with those kids, are we adequately staffed at the middle school for those students?
I would believe so. I don't know that we aren't. We have 2 counselors and 1 social worker, correct, currently, as well as the yes, and as well as the our mental health therapist.
Okay. And we've got Hazel.
Yes, and Hazel chips in as well.
Yes.
Did you have something? I'm sorry.
I just said, and our mental health specialist.
Thank you.
Okay. Good.
And then staff wellness. This is some data from Innova. This is just from 4th quarter, so most recent report that we got from October. So this is the employee assistance program. During that quarter, 11 total requests. I'm trying to think of the right word for it. 11 people that use the service. And just a breakdown, all calls were from employees, mostly female, so on and so forth. So while that may not seem a huge number, over a few months' time, we did have some folks need it and take advantage of it. So that is a relatively minimal cost, but it's good to see that people are using it regardless.
But no cost to the staff?
No, none at all. Unless you go beyond the allocated number of visits. Like if you were to do continuation, and I don't know how that works, but there would be costs that they would take on after that.
And can you track the website? Do we know, did people utilize the website maybe more than they did the actual telephone?
I don't know that. I can ask that. Amy Oates oversees this, so I can ask that.
Yeah, okay. It's such a great, I think it's just such a great offering that we have.
And then just to close, it all comes back to this, as I said. I think we've come a long way with the use of data. There's never a lack of it. Through MTSS, Ms. Oates, understanding of those folks, our principals that are involved in it, putting it to use. We try to address every deficiency, but that's difficult. So sometimes you just got to focus in. Especially when we look at those subgroups, the highest areas were our students with disability that were down here, our EL learners, and our economically disadvantaged. So we got to focus on those, because sometimes you try to get too far spread and too many irons in the fire, and you can't make any headway. So those are our focus areas at the time, but we continue to plan, do, study, and act, and ultimately work towards continuous improvement, which is a job that's never done. That concludes my presentation.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Asher?
This is extremely helpful. I will say that just getting first year doing this helps a lot to see what the reality is and what you're tracking, because then when we have to make decisions on funding and positions, and that's why we're asking what's your need, this is what we need so that we can make those educated decisions on what you need. So
Sure.
Thank you so much for presenting this and everybody that put it together.
Very good. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Asher.
So just 2 follow-up items. I'm going to get some trend data for gap groups, and then the use of the Innova website. Did you ask that? Who asked that? I'm sorry.
I did. Not super important, but.
Everyone is firing at some point. All right. Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, just our discussion item, bathroom safety. So I think, Ms. Springate, you wanted this on the agenda?
I think it was more Miss McCowan, but I'm happy that it's on the agenda.
Yeah.
Do we have any updates as far as getting a forum together or figuring that out?
We have reached out, Mr. Wells has reached out to the Kentucky Council for Safe Schools, and we've been unable to find anyone to facilitate this. I think that if the board wants to move forward with that, it would certainly have to be facilitated, I would think, by the board or the district, whatever. But yeah, we can't find anybody to help facilitate it. I don't think anybody.
Was it just the Kentucky Council for School Safety that we checked with, or did? Because I
Yeah.
thought there was another group that was mentioned at the last
They
meeting,
do a lot of community forums, the Pritchard Committee.
or even KSBA.
We did not reach out to the Pritchard Committee.
I'm happy to reach out to whoever I need to. I just think that it's a worthwhile. It would be a worthwhile activity. It would be a good use of time, and I think it's always good to engage our community whenever we can. Just because you've got folks that are saying I don't feel safe, folks that are not saying anything about it at all. I just think that it's important to work together to come up with whatever solutions may be available, so that people feel safe in their space.
And I do think people always want to be heard. I mean, I know if I'm involved in anything, professionally, personally, being heard, even if you're not getting the answer that you want, just being heard is a good thing. And being educated about this is what we're doing, why we're doing it, this is the plan, this is how things are. I think, communication, you can't over communicate. So I definitely agree with that.
So I think that's fine. If you want to do the research, bring it back and we can vote on actually having a forum. That's fine. Okay. Anything else? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass and a second by Ms. Springate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our presenters as well. Great job tonight. Thank you.